Hello, welcome to the channel. Today what we're going to talk about is understanding run history status for Agentic Workflows. Let's go ahead, let's take a deep dive. Alright, so I do get this question from time to time about when I'm using agent loop in either a conversational or an autonomous mode, and this probably applies even more so to conversational. How come my workflow is in a running state, even though I may have completed my conversation with that particular workflow? And that question is usually followed up with, is that costing me money? Is that burning tokens? And is there a way to mark it as successful if I know that it's done? So in order to answer these questions, I think it's important to sort of take into account these considerations. So if we think about traditional workflows or integrations, and would be stateful workflows, let's use that as an example. We have deterministic steps, right? So we have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then finally we have an end state, an end step that is going to signify that that particular workflow is complete. And so that's great. You see it as a successful run, or if it failed, it shows up as a failed run, but you know that it's reached a final state because it's deterministic. Now, when we think about agentic processes, they're different, and so we need to think about them differently. So we typically have a goal in mind that we want to go ahead and achieve. And the whole idea is that the agent, in conjunction with a large language model, is going to seek to achieve that goal. And it's going to seek to achieve that in a non-deterministic manner, right? So there can be a lot of different variables that will determine what gets executed and in what order. And as a result, it makes it difficult for you to see that reflected in your run history. Now, especially when we involve a human and we've got conversation, we don't know when that conversation is complete, generally speaking. So the idea is you typically will have a session, and that session could involve a particular, say, case or incident. And you can go ahead and essentially ask questions or provide prompts over a long period of time. That could be over seconds, minutes, hours, even days. And so when you really think about that in mind, well, how would the agent and the LLM actually know that you're done your conversation? So that's where it's really sort of important to sort of change the mindset around this. And if you think about sort of the importance of having a chat session and being able to enable things like memory and understanding context and having it persisted over a long period of time is really important. So the bottom line is that when the workflow is in a running state, it's just waiting to be nudged to do more processing. Now, I know people see that running state and go, ooh, is this like, burning up CPU or burning up memory or burning up tokens? And the answer is no, right? So it's kind of goes back a little bit to the notion of like orchestration, hydration, and rehydration in BizTalk, right? When we've got a stateful workflow, we have the state that's persisted in a data store. And when there's a new action or sort of a new, execution that's required, it basically gets woken up and gets run there. So it's one of those things where I wouldn't be too concerned about, hey, I'm seeing all of these, sitting in a running state. And I'm like, oh, is this costing me money or using compute? So I would not be too concerned about that. Now, I oftentimes get the question of like, well, can I just like terminate the workflow? And terminate the workflow in this context would mean terminate with success. And so if you truly do have a point in your process where you understand that, yes, this is the end of the road and there's sort of no expectation or no anticipation of a subsequent step, you could go ahead and do this. Now, I would lean against doing this, but since people ask the question and there is a shape that exists, I feel it's worth going ahead and addressing here. So when you do this, you can actually complete that particular session. And in this case, the idea is like, okay, we've got an ITSM bot or agent, and once we've closed the ticket, that's the end of our process. So you could do something like this where once the ServiceNow incident is closed, you can call the complete session tool to complete your business process. Inside of this terminate workflow, you would set that to success, and what you will see is that run will be sort of completed, and you will see it green and successful. Now, there's some side effects, and for these reasons, I'm cautioning you in terms of doing this. But once again, since the question's been asked, it's better to answer it than to just leave people hanging. So naturally, if you actually complete that workflow and a user then tries to continue a chat, well, it's over, right? This has failed to send, that session is done. So there is no way to go ahead and rehydrate that. The other thing I would say is that there's some side effects in terms of your run history, like the agent log will still show up here, but your ability to dive deeper into those steps will be impacted. And so that would probably something that's pretty important for folks. So that would be sort of a reason not to go ahead and do this. So my recommendation is agentic business processes will introduce new concepts. And we really need to think about how we adapt to those new concepts versus leaning on what have we always done. And, you should take comfort knowing that if you have a hard failure, that will be marked as a failure. So you can lean on that knowing that something has failed versus something that might be perceived as like, is this thing actually working still? And so if you think about, no, this isn't costing you money when it's in that running state, that should also provide some comfort. So in my opinion, the recommendation is you would need to have a really good reason to alter the default behavior and just kind of think of it as like, this is kind of a new paradigm. This is sort of a new way in order to process these requests in the context of an agentic workflow. So, just lean on it from that perspective and stay calm. So hopefully this answers some questions about understanding run history with agentic workflows. Thanks.